Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
First item on the agenda is declaration of interest, and members are reminded of the legal requirements of the declaration of interest. Does any member have a declaration of interest they wish to declare?
No.
Second item on the agenda, public question time. Do we have any members of the public who wish to ask a question?
I'm not aware of anybody, Chairman.
No. Fine. To approve or otherwise the minutes of the last meeting held on the 7th of January.
Move them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favour? All three of us?
Aye.
Thank you. A police and community safety issue. We have got Mark somewhere. Mark, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mark.
Great. Right. I believe there's no crime figures come through with it being sort of prior to end of the month. But there is a couple of things I could highlight. We've had a report of a suspicious Audi, which we've circulated on the Lancashire Talking. That vehicle was seen in roughly a couple of times yesterday on private tracks, driveways, etc. When I've checked today, we've had an attempt burglary at Horton, just off the A59. So there's some work going on behind the scenes, looking at trying to get that vehicle stopped. Whilst I was doing some patrols regarding the influx of visitors into Barley with COVID, etc., I had a silver pickup which made off from me. We've done some checks on that vehicle. That's connected with wildlife poaching crime. A similar vehicle was seen a day or two later in Newchurch, believed to be trying to entice somebody's dog into their vehicle. So that, again, we're doing some work on that at a county level because it has been cited over in the Lancaster area. Another poaching incident happened up near Blackwell where a farmer's challenged some youths. One of them's assaulted him. So we're looking at that. Quad thefts seem to be the flavour of the month. The Ribble Valley is on average getting, I think we've had 7 or 8 in a 1 week period. Again, we have got quite a lot of intelligence and that's been worked on. Somebody was arrested last night from the Manchester area with 2 stolen quads in the back, which were stolen from over, we believe, the Padiham area. So, again, there's a lot of work going on with that, but we seem to be getting extremely busy with activity in the rural areas. The TAC Ops team have been tasked, as have the task force, so there will be a lot of activity during the night. Some of it will be in unmarked vehicles, just so people can be assured we are looking at it. Regarding the COVID, we have a designated vehicle out each evening covering Pendle and the Ribble Valley, purely going to any alleged breaches of COVID. That's really it on sort of our side, if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Turner?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mark, can you give any information on the vehicle you've just been speaking about, or would you prefer not to say it on a meeting like this tonight?
It's a 56 plate, 56 plate black Audi convertible. So we have circulated it on Lancashire Talking. Now, before I forget, if anybody from any of the relevant parish councils, if anybody they know wants to sign up, if they email me at they can email me at 694@lancashire.pnn.police.gov.uk. I will get back to them and I can sign people up. We have got quite a few signed up, but obviously we can't door knock, unfortunately, with the COVID.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions for Mark? No? Right, thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you. Good evening.
Right, planning applications. We've just got the one planning application, and this was actually deferred from the last meeting. And we have 3 speakers for this: Phil Holden, Roger Lee, and Brian Nelson. I can see Brian. Yes, you're here. Yes.
I think all are on the meeting.
Yes, they're all here, Chairman.
Right. Thank you.
Chair, would you like them to speak in the order they're listed? Phil?
I would,
Holden?
yes, please.
Right.
Philip?
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, yes. And I can see you now, so.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I spoke briefly to start to raise the issues on the last occasion when I invited the meeting to be adjourned.
Yes.
We are only here tonight because the orchard in Ribblesdale Place has been substantially altered, practically speaking and aesthetically speaking. We're only here tonight because the developer has felled or lopped 25 to 30 trees that were the subject of a woodland preservation order. And we're only here tonight because the developer sought to build his 3 houses in locations that he had no permission or right to build them in. Can I very briefly set out the chronology? The original application was granted planning permission in 2016. And as the meeting knows, a developer has 3 years with which to place the footings in the ground in order that that permission can be brought into effect. Those footings were placed in incorrect positions, particularly so far as plot 7
It's made the orchard down there.
No, you can tell.
Forgive me. It was granted on the basis that the trees were not to be felled.
Sorry, Mr. Holden, you're muted.
Forgive me, can you hear me?
Yes,
We can hear you now, yes.
Sorry, how much have you heard anything?
we have
Oh,
heard.
we've heard most of it, just
Yeah.
your last sentence.
So it was, the planning permission was granted in 2016 on the basis that no trees were to be felled. It was granted on the basis originally that those trees, when the building was taking place, were to be fenced off to preserve the integrity of those trees. And it was granted on the basis that the site was not to be accessed from Ribblesdale Place, which has a dangerous means of access onto Gisborne Road, so that any building materials were to be delivered through the orchard and from Gisborne Road. That was ignored, and the developer sought to deliver because it was easier for him to do so, and he had a wider means of access from Ribblesdale Place, and he removed a fence in order to do it. That's the background. We are here because he has put 3 properties in positions that they ought not to be in, 2 in particular, plots 7 and 10 from the plans. What he has sought to do was to change the plans unilaterally without means of recourse back to the council because he thought he could get away with it. It seems to me, looking at his plans, and when you look at the actual site itself, that in particular the corner plot, plot 10, was causing him problem because the plans were incorrectly drawn and not to scale initially. And so what that means is that had he put that in the original position, either it would have meant that he wouldn't be able to build the garage properly, or it would have encroached onto the driveway of plot 7. It might interest the meeting to learn that that plot 7 is now occupied by either the developer or somebody connected with the development itself. And so he, the builder, was faced with a difficult position. Either he comes back and asks for retrospective permission, or he ploughs on and seeks to put the two properties in different positions. And what he has done, he has moved the majority of the 3-storey elevation on those properties closer to number 2, Mr. Nelson's property, and closer to my property, number 4, without asking for permission. He only has applied for this retrospective permission because he was found out. And when we came back from holiday, both myself and Mr. Nelson last summer, it was clear that they were in the wrong place. Because he has put those properties closer to the boundary with number 2, he has put them closer to the remaining trees. He having already unlawfully removed 25 to 30 mature trees or lopped them. And it might interest the meeting to learn that most of the trees have been lopped in and around the property that he is now occupying and is moved into. So what he has done is move, in relation to plot 10, the garden room, completely taking it away. And he's moved the 3-storey elevation much closer to number 2 in order that he can get his driveway in, and in order that he gives him more room with the 3 properties at the front of those properties without telling anybody.
Mr. Holden, we're only allowing 5 minutes per speaker, so I need to sum up, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try to be brief, if I may, please.
Thank you.
He's not fenced off the trees. It is said in the committee report that those trees can be felled, and in particular the cypress trees close to plot 10, and that it isn't a part of your decision-making process. Well, I make this point. You cannot divorce the removal of those trees from this planning application, because the trees are now so close to plot 10, because the property is so close to the border with number 2, that nobody will buy that property. It has no commercial value as such, unless and until those trees are lopped, because it completely blocks the sunlight, and you can almost touch the tree from one of the windows of the 3-storey elevation that should be at least 2, probably 3 meters back from the position it currently occupies. And so if you grant this application, there will necessarily be the lopping and felling of a number of trees, both mature and cypress trees, which will fundamentally change the look of the avenue still further from those he has already unlawfully felled. And that is the position. He will be unlawfully enriched by his unlawful acts that have been profound and have only been found out. He would not be here today making this application if we and Mr. Nelson had not notified the council. Can I just part with this point? In 2019, building inspectors went onto the site to pass the plans. I have spoken with Neil Watson, the planning officer, and he tells me that it is not for the planning officers to look at the plans and make sure that the footings were in the right position. And he says that the council do not have the resources to check, unbelievably, that developers are putting footings in the correct place and complying with planning permission. And that should be a real concern to this committee and to councillors, that the council are not checking on whether or not planners, forgive me, developers are putting properties in the correct spot. We have
Thank you,
raised this.
Mr. Holden. I think you've gone nearly 10 minutes. So
Okay, well, I'll leave it at that.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Mr. Lee,
Good evening.
good
Can you
evening.
hear me?
Can hear you, yes.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, just in terms of procedure, I'll stick with the 5 minutes that you've allowed me and stay within that, because I understand that's your procedures, and I'll abide by them. Let me start off by talking about the relevant planning matters. And those relevant planning matters are obviously summed up in the officer's report. Thorough report, thoroughly assessing all the planning issues and recommending approval at the professional officer level. They're the facts. The other fact is, just to correct what the reason for the application is. The applicant didn't get the permission in 2016. He inherited the permission. He bought the site with that permission. You might not have cited the drawings from 2016, but they were hand drawn. They weren't based on a proper survey, a GPS survey. This application has been. And the reason that we are here is actually because the scheme had to be amended based on that survey. That development, as approved in 2016, simply just couldn't be built. That's accepted by the council, and that's accepted by the tree officer. Now, moving on to the comments from the gentleman that spoke before me. A lot of it isn't relevant to this application. That's the starting point. Yes, trees are relevant, but the works that have been carried out are in agreement with the council, have been discussed with the council, have been discussed on site with the tree officer. There is an approved tree planting scheme already granted by the council last year, a variation of condition 17 of the 2016 approval. So the tree proposals put forward in this application replicate what has already been approved by the council. Tree protection measures were put in place. It isn't relevant to talk about access from Ribblesdale Place. It isn't relevant to talk about some of the other points that have been made, but in terms of Ribblesdale Place, access was taken, that was discussed with residents, and then it wasn't done again. That was closed off and access came through the way that the council wished it to be. Now, in terms of plot 7 isn't occupied. That's wrong. Plot 7 is not fit for occupation, not ready for occupation. Plot 7 is further away from the boundary with number 2 than the approved scheme in 2016. Elements of plot 10 are further away from the boundary with plot 2 than approved in 2016. Where the gentleman is correct is that the two-storey elevation does move closer, but it is still well within the limits of the recommendations on distance guidelines as set out in the officer's report. And the tree planting scheme will also ensure privacy is respected in both current residents and proposed residents. As I say, the application is recommended for approval and has been quite correctly assessed. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Nelson? Mr. Nelson, you're muted.
Yeah, I've unmuted myself. Can everybody hear me?
We can, yes. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Nelson. I purchased the bungalow 2 Ribblesdale Place back at the end of February 2020. It is only 11 months, but I'm sure you're it seems an awful lot longer now with what we've been going through. When we bought the property, our solicitor made us aware of planning permission that had been granted on land adjacent to the bungalow. This, on prima facie, appeared to be a controversial site. This committee having initially refused permission, but it was granted on appeal. However, the appeals officer attached some serious conditions to this decision. So we felt that the development, when it went ahead, actually had little effect on our privacy due to the required tree screening and the development layout. On reflection, we were clearly naive in surmising that because of the history, in particular, the planning department, we believed would ensure that conditions were adhered to. But when we advised breaches of that planning permission, we were advised by Mr. Watson that once planning is granted, the planning department effectively wash their hands of it and expect the developer to adhere to the agreed plans without checks. It was clearly stated in the conditions that before development started, a fence was to be built to protect the trees. These were not only to enhance the environment, but also to provide adequate screening to the neighbouring properties on Ribblesdale Place. This fence has never been constructed, leading to what we can only describe as tree carnage. Our objection is based on design, not of the actual houses, but of the layout, of the development itself. The fact that we're here tonight is indicative of the apparent choice the developer has made not to follow the plans, but to build to his own preferred layout. We believe it's a demonstration of selfish opportunism. Opportunistic because he clearly was aware that no checks would be placed on him as to his preferred layout, and selfish because he showed scant regard for the neighbours on Ribblesdale Place. Plot 10, which is adjacent to our bungalow in particular, the 3-storey element has moved, not 2-storey, the 3-storey element has moved almost 4 metres closer to our property from the agreed plans, thus compromising our privacy. This has necessitated tree removal. The gable end of our property has a bedroom window, a bathroom window, and a window in the room, which is now our home office. It is substantially more imposing than we are sure that the appeals adjudicator envisaged. As I said it earlier, we would not be here tonight if this developer had followed the agreed plans. But having chosen deliberately a different path, and is now seeking effective retrospective permission, we ask you, Chair, and the members to refuse this application and instruct a reversion to the original agreement. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Oliver, are you indicating you wish to speak?
No, sorry,
No,
I didn't realise.
Sorry, I can see something flashing. And Councillor Turner. Councillor Turner, you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My apologies, I was muted. I forgot to switch it on. Could I ask a question of Catherine, please? We hear an awful lot of movement of this site away from the agreed plans. Now, obviously, building inspectors will have been checking the locations of the footings and the buildings that are being erected on the site. Could she confirm whether or not the buildings are in a different location to that was originally agreed? And if so, how much farther have they moved towards the adjacent properties? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay,
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I think Catherine has left the room for the moment.
I'm in the kitchen.
No,
No, she's here. Right. Did you hear Councillor Turner's question?
yep. Just to clarify, building regs is obviously a different process from planning. It's not always done by the local planning authority or council. Sometimes it's approved inspectors. But obviously the reason we've got this application before us is because the plots have moved, and that's what we're considering. It is all in the report about the distances. We've assessed all the potential impacts, and what members need to consider is the principle of housing has been established here. We've heard a lot of different information about the TPOs and things like that. What we need to consider is the difference between the approved scheme and this scheme, and the merits of the scheme before us, and that's what the report outlines, and what the recommendation is for. Members have got an update report which says that the 2 additional parking spaces have now been provided and highways are satisfied with that. Drainage has been agreed and has already been installed in accordance with that approved scheme. So in terms of the outstanding issues now, there isn't any, and members can consider the scheme on those merits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
Madam Chairman, may I come
Councillor
back on
Turner?
that,
Yep.
Catherine, please? Catherine, thank you very much. Yes, and I see the distances that you've included in here of 21 metres, and I see the distances that are included on the report. Are you telling us categorically that those regulations are and those distances are being adhered to, and there is no encroachment from that towards the adjoining properties?
Through you, Madam Chairman, we have the plans in front of us, which they've amended. If members have looked at the plans, they do show what was approved previously and the amended version of the plans with the dimensions onto the boundaries and adjacent properties. So in view of that, what is there and has been built, in our view, is acceptable.
So I'm sorry, Madam Chairman,
It's all right, carry on, Councillor.
I'm just clarifying now that you are saying that the present buildings are in compliance with the plans that we have seen and we have available, and there is no encroachment from those plans to any closer to adjoining properties.
That's correct, Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Hodson?
Can you hear me?
Can hear you, yes.
Okay. Can I just ask for clarification? Are the houses in a different place to the original plan? Is there any merit in the arguments of the 2 people who live in Ribblesdale Place that the developer has completely done what he wanted to do and not followed the original planning approval?
Through you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I think I just answered that to what Councillor Turner said. This is the reason we are looking at this application, because it's to amend the scheme and vary the position of the houses that they're into the position they've put them into. And it's those differences between the approved scheme and the built scheme that we are considering tonight.
But
Thank you, Catherine.
a question, Chairman, Madam Chair, is that there seems to be a huge disconnect between the planning application and the building regulations. There seems to be no approval, there seems to be no connection between the two. Planning approved something originally, and now there's a retrospective thing come in because they built something in the wrong place. And to me, fundamentally, that seems wrong. And taking issue with the 2 residents of Ribblesdale Place, I would like to propose that this is rejected because it seems the developer has done exactly what he wanted to do and not what he should have done. So the rejection is based on design. He has not followed the original design.
Thank you, Mr. Hodson. Catherine, do you wish to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, as members will be aware, this does happen. We do get amended schemes for applications. Things do get moved slightly and they come in with amended schemes, and we have to consider those. It's not a reason to refuse this application purely because somebody has built something not in accordance with the approved plans. They are allowed to put in amended schemes. As we said, the principle of the development has been established. We've assessed the new scheme. It's acceptable. It would be completely unreasonable to refuse on that basis.
Thank you, Catherine. Mr. Holden, I really shouldn't let you back in, but I will do. You're mute.
Yes, sorry. It was simply to clarify that there has been a radical change in the position of the properties, particularly the corner plot. It's moved several metres forward. And I just make this final point. I know that I shouldn't be labouring the point, but the developer's property, which is also neighbouring number 2, What he sought to do with his own property is he originally had planning permission to put a garden room halfway across the back of his property. What he's now done is built it in contravention of the planning and built it right across the back of his property. So it's now integral with his own garage. And that has meant that it's become a lot closer to mine and in particular, Mr. Nelson's property. It's encroached upon the privacy and it's meant that the properties are closer to the trees. It will almost certainly mean that the trees will be felled in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Catherine?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was just to come back and say, obviously we've considered the impacts. Mr. Holden's property is a considerable distance away. There is no impact on that property at all. In terms of number 2, Ribblesdale, they have built an extension on the side which has a utility room and bathroom extension to it, and there is an additional window that they've put in there as well, to a secondary window to the bedroom. But again, the impacts from what has been approved to what is proposed here would not have an impact on that property. So in terms of what members need to consider, it's what the scheme is in front of us and how that differs from what was approved previously. Thank you very much, Catherine. So you've heard that Mr. Hodgson has actually moved, as he is entitled to as a parish councillor, he has moved that this application be refused. Do you have a second, Mr.
Chair, I've just been advised whether Mr. Lee wishes to add any comment, and seeing as other people have spoken twice.
Mr. Lee, do you wish to say anything?
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for giving me the opportunity again. The only point I would make, and it's only to restate what I've said already, but I think it's worth saying, given what Mr. Holden said, when he suggests that plot 7 is closer to number 2 and closer to his property, that's completely incorrect. And you can see that from the drawings approved in 2016 and the drawings subject to this application. And as the planning officer has said, there was actually no impact on Mr. Holden's property in any event. It's 27 metres away from plot 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. No, Mr. Holden, I cannot let you in again. No. Right. It has been moved that this application be refused. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair, I will second that.
Second, it's been moved and seconded that this application be refused.
Chair, before you go to the vote, can I advise you, if it's refused,
it will go to policy and resources.
On what specific grounds are members moving to refuse it? Because just because it's unauthorised is not a grounds for reason for refusal. So members would need to give me a more specific ground, and then I can advise you on that.
Mr. Hodgson did say design.
More important than that, non-compliance with design. The design was established, and it would appear the developer has done exactly what he wanted to do and ignored it and then come back retrospectively. So it's non-compliance with design.
Through you, Chair, the design is exactly the same in terms of any potential impact as what was previous. The design matches in with the existing houses that are already off Gisborne Road. You would need to give me something, otherwise we would need to refer it to policy and resources on that basis.
Madam Chair, could I say, if Catherine ordered a car with 4 seats and it was delivered with 3, the car shape is the same, but it's not compliant, and that's the point I'm making.
Here.
Councillor Turner wishes to speak. Councillor.
Yes, Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, Catherine, can you please just confirm that yes, the structures that is taking place as we speak at this time are variant to the original planning consent that was granted. However, the application for the amendment that we are now considering to make decision on today is simply moving the building in its entirety to the design that was approved initially into an incorrect position compared to what the original planning was for, but you are also confirming that the distance from other properties is compliant with regulations of distance. And can we just confirm that number 2, who had an extension, was that extension built after the initial application was made in 2013 and then subsequently again 2016?
Through you, Madam Chairman. There are some slight details that have changed in terms of the layout, but the principle of the design and the materials is the same as what was approved. Yes, the position of the plots has been moved, and in some degrees it was to enable the trees, which have obviously grown since the first permission was granted. In terms of the granting of the permission of the extension, the date on the plans is January 2020, if that answers your question, Councillor.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
So it has been moved and seconded that this application be refused. I will now put it to the vote. All in favour of refusal, please indicate. Councillor Turner? Councillor Newman?
Yep.
You're in favour of refusal. Councillor Turner? I will be voting in favour of the refusal. Councillor Turner? Sorry, Councillor Turner, you're muted.
My apologies, Madam Chairman, against, sorry.
Yeah. You're in favour of it.
No, against the refusal.
You're against the refusal.
Yes.
So there's 2 in favour of refusal and 1 against. Can I just confirm that, Councillor Newman, you're in favour of refusal? I am, and Councillor Turner is against.
Yes.
So that's 2-3, the application is refused.
Thank you.
Chairman, the fact that it's going to Policy and Resources Committee, can I just tell the speakers that that meeting is being held on the 11th of February. So if people want to speak, they should let me know.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
Can I ask what time that will be, please?
It'll be at 7 o'clock in the evening.
And the location, please.
It'll be again a Teams meeting.
Thank you.
So we can send you the invitation.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So we now come to planning appeals. So we've got a following decision, and that is appeal against the refusal of planning permission for erection of a 2-storey dwelling to include extensions and alteration to former dairy building at the old dairy, Ringling Farm, Pasty Lane, and the appeal has been dismissed. And we have got the new appeals are for the land to the north of Barleyday Road, Barrowford, and appeal against the refusal of planning permission for the conversion of barn into 2 holiday lets and the siting of 5 holiday cabins in Higham. Thank you. Enforcement action, do we have any update on any enforcement action, Catherine?
Through you, Madam Chair, I have been advised by a reliable party that some of the cabins and equipment at Spenbrook Mill have been removed from the site. I was aware that it's 2 different developers doing the mill and the new build, so it looks like that they may have come off the site. So we'll continue to monitor that and see what happens with that. But in terms of the breach of the condition, obviously nothing's happening at the moment. There's no development taking place. I think Dab's house, I've seen an application come in. I don't know whether it's changed to new ownership or not as yet. As you'll be aware, we served a breach of condition notice.
Yeah.
But we were made aware that the property was up for sale and the ownership was expected to change shortly. It hadn't when we last checked, but we have had some correspondence come in and a new application come in, which might well address that issue. I've not looked at it in detail, but I will update members as soon as we've had a chance to do that.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Financial matters, the capital programme. We have an underspend which we have to look at. Blackwell Parish Council, litter signs, Goldshabu Parish Council. They've underspent £210. And roughly Parish Council, but they haven't gone ahead with their Riverside screening programme. So they have put in another bid for that.
Could I just mention, Chairman, that
yes,
item 48 has actually now been completed. So no doubt you'll get an update at your next meeting on that one. That's the notice boards for Roughly Parish Council.
Oh, good.
Oh, just are you going to vote on each line, 9, 10 and 11 separately?
I think we can do them both at the same time. Is everybody happy that the underspend is paid back into the capital programme?
Yes.
Yes. £320 and £210.
Agreed.
There we are. Thank you. That's the that down. So we'll now consider Roughly's bid.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Which is here before you. Do you wish to enlarge on it, Mr. Walker?
Yes, I will do. Just by way of briefly the background, we were hoping to screen the sheds, as you know, on the original programme, but the land is owned by the caravan site behind. And as you'll have seen from your previous item on enforcement, there's been a stop notice served, and to put a fine point on it, they're taking the bat and ball home, so they won't let us on the land to do the screening. We have in train, and it's been in train for some time, what we've called the Industrial Heritage Project for the village. There's a report there which gives, I hope, a brief background, but there are historically 5 mill sites in Burnley, and not many people know about this. There are some sort of relics from those mills in the way of the ornate gates on the footpath and so on. And what we're hoping to do is to refurbish some elements of the original mill buildings, and also to put interpretation panels in with in one case the benches, and I think this is something that's quite important, not just for Roughly but for Pendleside generally, to raise awareness of the history of the area. We've updated, I know very briefly before the meeting you were asking about the costs. The updated cost estimates which you now have are for the phase 1, and hopefully the plinth for the phase 2 is £3,550. So we're asking really for the reallocation of the 2,500 from the fisheries sheds towards the heritage project, so that we can make a start. One of the key things is that, and again I mentioned this in the report, that the local history society have been quite excited and putting a lot of effort into the project. We need to give them the go-ahead so that we can start building up the background information and to do the text for the plaques. They're not going to be huge plaques, they're not going to be huge plinths. They're going to sit in the village landscape, we believe, quite successfully. But there's quite a lot of upfront work in the way of the history of the village which needs to be put in. So I'm hoping tonight you'll agree to the reallocation so that we can at least give the History Society the go-ahead and move on to begin to implement the project. So that's what I'm asking for. Would you please reallocate the 2,500 to the village so that we can get on with it?
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are you moving that?
Oh, I certainly would if I'm allowed to.
Yes, you are allowed to. Do we have a seconder for that? I would be quite happy to second it because I think it is important that our industrial heritage is recognised.
Agree.
Agree? Right, thank you. Councillor Turner?
Agreed.
Agree? So, there you are, Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Reopening, Councillor Turner, reopening of Barrowford Town Centre.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, to update the committee, there are 39 shops in Barrowford High Street, and I have been round. We are constrained for speaking to people at the moment with lockdown, unfortunately. However, the shops that are open, 9 of them have already indicated their delight at what we are proposing, what we are doing to inform people of how wonderful it is to shop in Barrowford and how safe it is at this stage. And also we are looking in the video and the web page that is being issued, that is being distributed, to identify the safety of where Barrowford, of what people can do in Barrowford, but also access to shops that are doing online shopping as well. I have circulated to members of the committee the names of the shops concerned and also the indications of the people that I have spoken to personally who have confirmed that they would like to join in for the ongoing efforts after the ERDF funding for safety has expired, because this is an excellent opportunity. Not only are we going to show people that they can come to Barrowford now, but we can also utilise the web page that is being issued so as to bring people into Barrowford indefinitely from the end of the lockdown period onwards. And as a consequence of that, I would like to see the web page then extended into a bid scheme for the improvement in Barrowford, which would obviously give us access into financial assistance for benefit development in Barrowford. Now, all the retailers that I've spoken to, and perhaps one of the most prolific acceptees was Booths, who were absolutely delighted with what we're doing, and the post office, and the number of the shops that you have seen listed on the list that I've sent to you, and all are happy to contribute on a regular basis when we go into the bid scheme and when we go in to the post-lockdown to keep the system going and to make sure that the web page is continued to be circulated with feature stores being identified. The delivery of the web page, the advertisement, as most of you will have by now seen in this month's edition of Red Rose, takes up the centre pages of the Red Rose, and we have in fact booked 4 months in advertisements in Red Rose, where, thank you, Mr. Walker, he negotiated for 4 months for the price of 2. We paid for 2 months and they're giving us 2 months for free. I would like to record, if I may, mine, and I'm sure the committee's thanks to Mr. Walker, to Dita Hassan, to the officers who have been so prolific in making sure that this has gone through, and it would not have happened had all the officers not donated their time so efficiently and so effectively. We are at the situation with the web page now shortly to be released. We are already doing the advertisements. and we are speaking with the retailers who are so prolific, so happy to join in the ongoing situation. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turner. So I think we can leave what happens afterwards till another day, because at the moment we're just concentrating on the funding we've got at the moment. So any questions for Councillor Turner? No?
No.
No. Exclusion of public and press. Thank you, Councillor Turner. To consider excluding the public and press from the meeting, so the following items can be discussed. First item here we have here is environmental crime.
So, councillors, you need to vote on excluding the public and press, and then we need to stop the live stream.
I'll second the proposal.
Right.
Okay, I'll let you know when you can start discussing the next item.